Welcome to the Riverstand Motor Speedway. We are back here again. It's been a while, but I took the same map save that I've had from months ago, and we're going to do another little test. Now, I don't know how thorough this test will be, but I'd like to try to figure out what's going on with the fuel mileage. I had a couple comments in a recent video about bumpy roads give you less fuel mileage. Now, what I did here on this track, let's just put the wireframe on. I'm going to take this auto purchase off. Is I just made this one lumpy. Now, I tried to go down about as much as I went up. So overall, it's not like they're all uphills. Like if you look, I don't know if you guys can see that well, but this is like a down hump and this is an up hump. It's not exactly perfect, but it's definitely what I would describe as a bumpy road compared to this one, which has, here, I'll turn off the wireframe. This one has a series of intersections, and I'm just curious to see if that has any effect on their fuel mileage. Now, this one is just a regular straight road. I guess you could describe it as close to the perfect road. It's not perfectly level. Things are uphill a little bit this way and downhill a little bit this way. So there is a bit of an uphill and a downhill, which I would like to see because if it's a slight uphill and downhill. Now, you're never going to have, well, that's not true. You could have some pretty steep inclines in your game. But I want to see if there's a difference in the RPMs down versus up. And also, I think this is going to be a pausey. It's not going to be like a race like the other ones to see which one's best. I'm going to try to pause it at times so we could take a look to see exactly how much fuel they used through each portion. So, in other words, if we just get them to go down to the halfway mark, we may be able to tell something from that about how much fuel they used. Like when they get to that same point, do they all have the same exact fuel? Or did one of these situations affect the amount of fuel? So I don't expect this to be the most thorough test, but I'm curious because, again, one of the comments was that bumpy roads give you less fuel efficiency. So we should be able to get at least an idea through this stretch, if that's true. Now, the other one is RPMs. So we'll just have to see what happens there. If we can kind of tell, hey, look, this one uses more RPMs going uphill or downhill, or does it just stay pegged at the same amount? Does it get better fuel mileage when it's going down to here versus up the other end? Now, this should be right dead in the middle, just so you know. These are pretty darn close anyhow. So if you look, there's a 1 kilometer mark, and then I kind of did a half a kilometer here, 2 kilometer, 3. So this is from between here more or less and here is a kilometer and a half, and over to here is another kilometer and a half. So, you know, it should be fairly realistic. Certainly if there's some kind of drastic thing, I think we'll be able to see. Now, I haven't run this at all, so I have no idea what's going to happen. May not even have the test set up perfectly. So let's go ahead and hit start on each one of these. They have the same exact route. They're starting, just so happens, from the same exact parking space. And I'll probably let's just do it in slow motion. Now they don't have a full thing of fuel, so they might end up coming back, which we'll just see how that affects us. But they should all pull out. Each one of these stations is filled up with fuel. It's not on auto purchase, so we should, if we let the test run longer, we could see just by measuring the amount of fuel that's left in each of the things. But they each have about 100 tons of corn that they can go back and forth with. Again, this isn't necessarily a race to see. I'm hoping we can see a result relatively quickly here, and you will know as quickly as I do. Good. So they're all going approximately at the same rate. Now, what I expect them to do at some point is to get low on fuel. So let's do this let's pause it. No, that's fast forward. All right, let me close this, and let's do it so we can very systematically. So we'll put the covered here, this one in the middle. Well, let's put it down here for the moment. And we'll put this one over here. I guess that's pretty good for still being able to see. Now, let's see where we're at just getting started. Make sure they're all at about the same. 133, 133, 133. RPMs, 88, 39. Interesting. Why would this guy only be at 39 RPMs? But look, he has the same exact amount of fuel. Well, he's got whatever, within decimal points anyhow. I'm not sure. that we could beat. This guy's got 0.17, but let's just let them go and see what happens, at least till they get down to this middle point. You know, they're all the same exact trucks. They should be carrying the same exact loads. You know, you could argue that the up and down guy has to go further, but I'm not even so sure that that's true. Look, he's pulling out ahead. And I'm trying to keep... Look, this guy's RPMs is barely popping up. It's like it's... Look how that's going goofy when it gets past each of these. As far as their speed goes, they're now all doing 94. And when they get close... Let's just stop them when they get really close to all being at the same point. Okay, that's pretty darn close. All right, so let's see where we stand. 99.42, 99.45, which this guy had a little bit less, or a little tiny itty bit more, you know, a few seconds ago. No difference in fuel mileage there, even though the RPMs... And we could, you know, I'd encourage you, I'm going to do the same thing when this is over, like maybe go back and look at the video again, like replay it and keep a better eye the next time on the RPMs. But their speed is the same. Now, yeah, the other thing I'd like to do is see what happens now that they get to this point and they're going uphill. And then we'll probably have to take a better look at this guy. See if the guy's engine RPMs, this is, you know, it's probably hard to see, but we're definitely down in a bit of a hill here. Like I said, each of the tracks is very even. But let's see now that they go past this point. So here's what I would have to say. Absolutely no difference with any of them on the fuel. Like they have the same exact amount of fuel, having gone pretty close to the same exact distance. Even though this RPMs was jumping around like a banshee, and this, why would this be at 7? I don't 100% understand. But let's just see what happens as they go up the hill. Now, the other thing, I really probably should have written it down. I might think about it more. I think they each had 160 tons of, or liters of, oh, tons of fuel, right? No, liters. Liters of fuel to get started. Yeah, tons would be an awful lot. All right, so, you know, to get to this point, that meant that they, just because we're at 99 now, it meant that if, assuming my math was right there, it was about 61 liters of fuel to get to this point here. Now, we may have a little bit of an issue because eventually they're going to stop and get fuel here, but we'll see if we can't get lucky. All right, so here we go. Let's play it forward again and see. Kind of hoping they don't turn around to come back to this gas station, but if they do, that's fine as well. Let's pull up forward where we can see them a little better. So they're pulling up the hill. Look how this guy's RPMs are just jumping around. Now the guy's RPMs are at 0. Like, there's no way they should be at 0 here. This guy's jumping around. I don't know what's going on with those RPMs, because if you're going up a hill, if everybody's ever driven a car, especially a truck, their speed is all pegged at 94. Look how their RPMs just jump around. I mean, and here's the other thing to say. That RPM's is jumping around, but this fuel is like steady going down. Look, that's at 0. There's no, like, why is that just sitting at 0? It's 0. And the fuel, the thing to note about that, when you talk about, oh, it's the RPMs. All right, let's pause it again just to, okay, good. They're going to go in and get fuel. But before they do, let's just take a look. Are they all at the same exact amount of fuel? Now, we certainly would expect them to be because they all just went up the same hill. Yeah. I mean, this is 50. I know it might be hard to see depending on how you're watching this, but 59.54, 59.57. There was absolutely no difference in that. Yeah, where's this one? Sorry, 59.54. So absolutely perfectly the same amount of fuel used on each one of those. And it was about 100 exactly from the very start, right? So we used 61 on the first stretch, and then we used like 40 on the second stretch there. So that doesn't make a huge amount of sense because they were going more downhill. Let's see if I can show you guys that. Well, maybe we'll show afterwards, but like we can come to here. Maybe you can see, like, that's slightly uphill this way, right? Well, they came from here, so they were going slightly downhill, and they seem to have used more fuel. So let's see if the same thing holds true. Let's let them fill up. Hopefully they'll all fill up relatively. That one's getting slightly ahead of the others for some reason. So they fill up to about 800, and then they pull back out, and we'll just let them keep going. So now their RPMs are acting like I would say they should, quote unquote. That's right, they're going to go let them get their stuff dropped off so they can head back. Now they're head back empty, which I think I've shown that does use less fuel when they're heading back empty, but so that's a little bit another thing that's not quite, that certainly could be an impact on this, but I would have to say, look, that RPMs is at 0 and that fuel's just still going down just as fast as it ever was. And again, I know that, like they're not, for whatever weird reason, this one's pulling out ahead slightly. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. If anything, you would think the bumpy road would slow them down a little bit, but whatever. It's all close enough, I think, for the estimate purposes that I'm trying to do here. But I think I would say, look, there's no doubt that RPM is at 0 and that fuel is still going down. Now, is it going down slower than it was? It could be, but it's certainly not directly tied to it. 0 RPMs certainly doesn't mean 0 fuel usage. And even if that is like a fuel usage gauge, all right, let's pause it there. Make sure they're at the same fuel. 741, 743. So this guy has much more fuel for some reason after he came down the hill. This guy, not so much. And then this guy, 744. So, yeah, why would this guy be at 741 after coming back down the hill? I mean, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense why he would be off. Now, is it a rounding? Yeah, you know what? No, it's not even just like a rounding where this one's at 741.99 and this is at 743.00. I mean, there's just no doubt this guy used more fuel for some reason, and he used it on this, right? Because when we looked earlier, when he was up here, it was all even. Now, maybe one of them didn't fill up with quite as much, and just hard to pick that out. All right, so let's just see if anything happens across here, knowing that these two, does it average out by the time they get to the end? We'll see if, does it maintain the difference of about 2 liters here as it goes over the bumpy or goes past the intersections. Do the intersections, they really don't seem to have a great impact on the whole thing. And bumpy is down. See, bumpy, I'll call him Bumpy, the number 3 guy over here. Let's wait till they all get back to the warehouse. And then they'll have traveled the same exact distance across the whole thing. And 1, 2, 3. Okay, so they're all filling up with crops right this minute. So they've all traveled the same exact route as best I think as any human could tell them to do, other than this one had some bumpiness in it. This one didn't. And here's what I would say. 702.26, 701.64. By the time this guy got through the bumpy, he was down to 700. So this guy used 1 liter more of fuel in that trip. This guy used he's at 702, so he used 2 less than this guy, or might not even quite, less than 2, 1.5. And this guy is about 1 difference. So this did use a very slight more amount. Now, we started at 160. They used about 100 to get to the gas station, and then they filled back up to about 800, which I'm assuming it would be a round number in 800. We just didn't catch it at the 800 mark because they started pulling out the second they got filled up. So that means they all used about 200 liters of fuel. So the difference, if there was anything between these 3 setups, is 1 liter out of 200. Maybe you could argue 2 liters, 1.5, right, out of 200, which is When you think about that, that's a 0.5% difference in efficiency between these three. And I just don't think that the test is necessarily even that accurate. Like, if we reran it again, I bet you we could get a slightly different result. And while the RPM certainly may be affecting the fuel economy, I just don't see it directly relating to the amount of fuel that we're using, even though they are all on the same basic course, right? Like, it certainly, this seems to go down pretty consistently, maybe not exactly, where this is just jumping all over the place. And maybe that is how it works and how it's related, but at times it didn't make sense. And you can welcome to go back and look at the RPM gauge and say, well, this one was up higher more consistently, and why would this one be dropping down and whatnot. So, realistically, I'm not sure that bumpy roads have anything to do with the fuel mileage. And I guess the other thing we could probably do is just play it forward a little bit. Maybe I'll let them go back and forth twice, and we'll take another look to just make sure that there's not any significant difference. And let me just fast forward for a minute here. Okay, they're just about to pull in, so I slowed time down a little bit. And let's let them hopefully all get pulling in and filling up at the same time. Yes, there we go. All right, so again, they should have all traveled the same exact distance 2 more times. So the first test just repeated in fast forward mode twice. And I think I'm actually just going to, well, you guys probably already know this, give you a timer to come back to this point in the video. So that way you can watch things, quote, in real time, and you can judge for yourself. You don't have to take my word for it. You're seeing the same exact test from start to finish that I am. If you don't agree with my assumptions, I welcome the comments. So in any event, we are at 333.65, 334.17, 336.46. So I would have to say that, again, going back and forth that many times, I didn't really even notice if they filled up when they were down the other end. I don't think they did. But in any event, this one is slightly more efficient, but it's really not that much different than the first test results, right? After the first test, this guy got out by 1.5 compared to this guy, and now he's at, 2.5. So this guy is maybe getting like 0.5%, 0.005, I would have to estimate, more gas mileage. Now, percentage-wise, I say gas mileage because I'm American, but, liters per kilometer. But again, how many liters is that? I mean, I think it's about 200 per trip, so they probably used in the neighborhood of 600 total, more or less. And to be off by 3, really a little bit less than 3 in 600 kilometers is just not a significant amount. It's certainly nothing I'm ever going to worry about. And then I looked a little more while we were doing that test. This RPMs, if it has anything to do with how fast this fuel's going down, then it's a very mysterious thing. It's because even sometimes it might seem like the fuel's going down a little slower or not, but a lot of times this thing's pegged at 0, and then that's just way up. It's just still going down. It seems as fast as ever. And again, there's no significant difference. Now, I know I could probably do like a hill climb versus a flat, but then the problem that I have with that is that it's awful hard to do, to do that. And again, with this RPM jumping all around, I mean, we do have hills here, and they're not, I know that's not a massive hill, but you can see it most likely. Like there we are down in the valley, right? Like even if I go up like this, if I spin around, you can see we're down there. You can see the hilliness of this, I think, real nicely from that angle. The intersections didn't seem to have any impact whatsoever on their speed, which I was just sort of curious about myself. So there you go. Well, let me know what you think. But yeah, if you want to try to tie the RPMs to the fuel mileage, go for it. But I'm just not seeing it. Certainly not on any kind of a linear scale over on this thing. Maybe there's some baseline that this is, like showing you when it uses extra. But even then, I don't know. It just didn't make any sense to me. They're all running neck and neck. This one's showing 0. This one's like bouncing around way up here. So maybe it does show a little more when you're pulling a heavy load up a hill. It might peg out there, but I'm not going to make any assumption towards that. And as far as the hilly goes, yeah, I mean, that might have some little tiny effect, but again, like I said, I did do up and down about the even amount, more or less, so that it was relatively fair in the sense of just being bumpy, not being like way up a big hill and then way down a big hill. And so there you go. Well, let me know what you think. Probably not the most exciting test, but they were a couple things that I was curious about, so I assume maybe you guys might have been too. Like I said, I welcome all your comments. Thank you guys for watching, and have a good day. Bye-bye.